All right, I was reading this book this morning. I've been reading it for the last week here, and some of the stuff I read this morning really was applicable to me and was not necessarily eye-opening, but it just confirmed in a more logical way kind of how I felt over the last period of time, is that we as a society, this book is called Boys Adrift, which talks about how men, boys, manhood as a whole has basically gone off course over the last really 30 to 50 years, if you want to look at it from that perspective. But what it comes down to on there is that we don't have a kind of process at which boys turn to men anymore. You look at tribal cultures where there's an initiation process, there's a manhood ritual that goes through where a boy becomes a man. And it's not necessarily a delineated line, but there's a formality at which they travel through where first and foremost, they have to learn from the other men who are there. They have to have mentors, leaders, examples to teach them what manhood really is, to show them an example of it so that they then can be led themselves to that. If they don't see it, they won't go that way. There also has to be a level of accountability and a standard set within that culture, that tribe, that shows them, you know what, these are the moral, character, ethical participation values at which you have to live up to be part of this tribe, but also to be a man in this tribe on that piece of it. And there has to also be enough of a community of those people going through that process where they're not doing it on their own. They're doing it as a group. They suffer as a group. They win as a group. They achieve that status as a group. A group that grows together gets there faster than individuals trying to figure it out on their own. And I think from a societal perspective, one, we've isolated people. In other words, that group piece just isn't there. It's every man for themselves type of mentality more versus that tribe, that herd, that group of dudes that all move in the same direction on there. Accountability now, standards, there is no such thing anymore. We think they're a bad thing over a period of time. We cancel people, we put people in prison basically because the fact that they try to hold people to a higher standard. We see it as something that's a negative, not a positive on there. Accountability is a way to help people grow. It's a love. It's a thing that at the end of the day, not holding somebody else accountable actually is doing a disservice to them in that regard, especially if you're coming from a loving, caring, I want you to do better service mentality on there. And lastly, examples of manhood. You look around our society, we've lost it. There's still dudes that are there, but they're fewer and far between because we've got a generation now of people who weren't shown this over a period of time. They were lucky if they had a dad. They were lucky if they had a coach. They were lucky if they had a guy in their lives that cared enough to help show them the way, to show them an example, to create the accountability with it, and have that tribe with them that ultimately pushed them to that level. So because of those things, we've lost that process. We've lost that initiation as a society. In my opinion, that is the only way we get back to a better spot is by creating that ritualistic process that we go through again. And it doesn't have to be some drawn out thing, but at the end of the day, you men out there that have sons, you men out there that mentor, that lead other young men, boys, young men, I'm talking young men even 30 years old type of thing. They aren't men yet. They may be past 18. That's an age, but they haven't earned being a man yet. And that's a process at which you go through. And if you don't go through it, you'll never get there. So those of you, us, that are out there that have been fortunate enough to have been shown that way, that have developed in that process, it's our job to help pull people along. It's our job to be the mentor. It's our job to create accountability. It's our job to be the community for these guys that are out there. Our society needs it right now. Your families need it at home. I guarantee you that, and that's the only way we turn this ship around.